Powered by Rev Media in partnership with TSN, it is Season 5, Episode 66, a playoff edition of the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast, presented by our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey. Have you tried the Canadian Club Ginger Ale? Crisp, refreshing alternative to beer. It's well-balanced with the flavors of ginger, subtle notes of rye and spices. The new formula, 30% less sugar, 20% fewer calories. That's Canadian Club Ginger Ale. And you, Ray Ferraro, for those who are enjoying the Rain Dregs podcast on our YouTube channel in New York, right? That should be a dandy tonight as the Hurricanes try and stay alive.
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't think anybody thought this series would be over fast.
No.
And so we all kind of anticipated there would be game 5, but I think most of us thought it would be 2-2 at this point, and not the Canes kind of hanging on by their fingernails. And, they had the scratch and claw for their one win in game 4. And so they're back here for game 5, and we'll see what the road takes. But yeah, back in New York after a good weekend at home.
All right. Well, we'll look at the Eastern second round series momentarily, but obviously the Canucks and the Oilers, big headline stuff for us. So we'll get into that. Brought to you by Tim Hortons. New flatbread pizzas, perfect for any occasion, from a satisfying workday lunch or crowd-pleasing option for family dinners or weekend gatherings. Fresh to order, oven baked, starting at just $6.99. So 4-3 Canucks Sunday night. Artur Silovs rate 21 saves in the third period. He's to play the position at any level, you've got to be a little bit crazy, and certainly you have to have an abundance of confidence. But this guy has no NHL experience yet. Whatever, right? He knows what his job is, and his job is to stop the puck, and he's doing that better than Skinner and the other guys on the other side.
It is remarkable that the Oilers are getting so widely out-goaltended in this series. I mean, it's not even close, really. And it's not Demko that's doing it. I mean, the Thatcher Demko's an enormous loss for the Canucks. And, so they go to the Smith. He loses a game and wins a game, and then he gets hurt. And now this is what you had. They had a game where their fourth string goalie, Topilo, was the backup.
Yeah.
Like that guy hasn't seen a second of NHL action, and that's what they have. And he's been really, you hear this word in the playoffs a lot, he's been really resilient, because he gives up some goals, and then he just seems to not be bothered and get back into it, make a couple of saves. And when the Oilers started to pressure a little bit more in the second period, and then a lot more, he was awesome. I thought he was better in the second period than he was in the third. There seemed to be more shots that were protected around the middle in the third. But in the second, man, they had some amazing chances. And I know the Oilers fans, would say, we hit 3 goalposts, and absolutely did. But the fact of the matter is he's been a difference maker in the series. He really has. And the Canucks don't always win in a pretty fashion.
No.
But man, they defend hard. They get timely goals. Last night it was Besser, and they get a couple of power play goals, and they seem to find the way they need to on a particular night.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the end of the game and the exchange between McDavid, Zadorov, and Carson Soucy, right? I mean, message sending, the stick is high. Soucy, McDavid has fallen a little bit because he gets cross-checked by Zadorov just before getting cross-checked in the face. Now, the Department of Player Safety wanted to sleep on this Sunday night, so I'm sure that they're reconvening as we're recording, this episode of the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast. My sense is they're leaning to some form of discipline. So it's either a fine or it's a suspension. Is it worthy of either for you?
I think a fine in the middle of it, or a fine rather. And the reason is that they always seem, to take the totality of the play. So if you watch the play, the horn sounds, there's that scramble going on. Soucy gives McDavid a shove. McDavid gives him a two-hander back.
Yeah.
And so Soucy goes to cross-check him back, and Zadorov hits him at the same time.
Yeah.
So in the totality of that play, I think their view would be not intent by Soucy to hit him in the head. The intent is to hit him across the chest and shoulders, which happens 100 times a game. The push from behind lowers the player's, in this case, McDavid's head. And in the middle of it, McDavid's has thrown a two-hander at it. And even though I never liked this part of the rule, there is no injury.
Right.
That always seems to matter.
Yeah, it does.
To me, the act is it's either suspendable or it's not. In this case, I think I would be surprised if it's a game. I think it's a suspension, or I think it's a fine, rather. I think it's whatever the maximum fine can be.
Right. Well, we'll learn about that, and we'll follow up perhaps later this week. Take us into the Canucks lineup here a little bit deeper, Ray. And I mean, Brock Besser has had a real good run here. He's had a good year, and it doesn't look like he's interested in that year ending anytime soon. It took Lindholm, though, didn't it? A good chunk of time to find his place in that Canucks lineup. And I don't know if it was, just finding his fit, connecting with Rick Tocchet and what Rick Tocchet wanted him to do that might be the same or different than what he was doing in Calgary. But, are you at all surprised at the success now that we're seeing from especially Lindholm?
No. Okay. So I'll start there. I'm not surprised that he's playing well. I was more surprised that he played as poorly as he did when he came to Vancouver. And so all the things that you mentioned, certainly a new role. You're not going to be the top center here. You were brought in to be one of three centers, which was really the vision when they brought him in. So it's a new role. It's a completely different system. You're in competitive games as opposed to Calgary that was in that cell mode, which is a really, really odd area to play games in. You're kind of in it, but you're kind of not. And the third part was he had a wrist injury that, if you remember, they sat him out for 7 or 8 games.
Yeah.
And he had treatment, and in the midst of all that, he didn't play very well. And when he came back after that, I did the game. He came back after he'd sat out those games.
Yeah.
And you could see almost instantly that there was more energy. He was really physical that first night. And I remember saying that this looks a little more like what Lindholm is. Now, last night, first shift of the game, he rocked somebody in the corner.
Yeah.
And so that line is, with Joshua and Garland, is dependable. They play him against McDavid or whoever else they're going to play. He's a really good player. And this is what they had hoped for when they brought him in.
Sure.
Besser, to me, it's always about his skating. If he is, because he's never going to be super fleet of foot, but if he's got the ability to get a half a stride away from somebody, man, he can shoot the puck.
Yeah.
And, the 2 goals he scored last night, the third one, the one that Lindholm tipped, was another shot, but the release on all 3 of them is super quick. It's decisive, and he's confident right now. And so the other thing I'd say about the Canucks is, so out of nowhere, Rick Tocchet drops in Niels Oman and Linus Karlsson, and they both do really well. Like, for Tocchet, is totally about how can I get this lineup the most effective, and if it's moving people in and out or up and down the lineup, he does it. He's got a great gut feel for what's going on. He really does. There's not been many times he's done something this year and you go, no, that didn't work. Like he's really got a gut feel for this team, and I think you got to go back. Remember last year when there was they hired him, and there was critique of geez, they're winning too many games down the stretch. Basically, what they did was they had a 30-game training camp.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, so for the teams that maybe could have done that this year, they didn't. Maybe the coaches weren't available when they wanted them to be. And so now they've got to go through that training camp. And the Canucks were in a different place. And I think it's really helped them this year.
Okay. Well, speaking of coaches and gut feel, who starts for Edmonton?
Oh boy. That's a tough one. I don't think Skinner was bad in game 4 at all. I mean, if you look at, there's a deflection, there's 2 wide open Besser shots, and then there's the power play goal that was kind of a broken play that Lindholm scored. I actually thought they were going to take him out after the first period, and then they left him in, and then I thought they would just leave him in, and then I was surprised they took him out. I think if they took him out, that they're going to play Pickard in game 4.
It looks like that, yeah.
Like I would guess the reason you put him in is that you want him to get a little feel of the puck. Although I don't know, did he make any saves, or did he just skate down there back and forth? So, but that's my gut feel. Wouldn't that be something if it's game 4 and you got Cal Pickard and Artur Silovs in there? Who would have guessed on that?
No one. Not who. No one. Dallas, Colorado, and then we'll shift over to the East because there's a lot to talk about with Florida, Boston, and we touched a little bit on the Rangers and the Hurricanes. Doesn't it feel like the Dallas Stars are now in they're on a roll, right? Doesn't it feel like that? I mean, you can talk about goaltending in every series, and normally that's where it starts, and Ottinger has been rock solid. But it does seem to me in watching Dallas, like they've settled nicely into the game that they want to play, that they know can beat that high-octane offense in Colorado.
Well, the one game they lost, they were up 3-0.
Yeah.
Right? Like that. Yeah, and then they fell apart for enough time that those Stars in Colorado took the game over. So it does feel like, to me, Dallas has controlled much of the series. Part of being in control is when the other team pressures you, your goalie's really good.
Yeah.
And Ottinger has been fantastic. Now, outside, the one game there where Georgiev wasn't very good, he's been fine. That's not been the problem. The problem is, to beat Dallas, you have to have some degree of depth because they have it. They get offense, they get play, good play up and down their lineup. And Dallas is, Sagan and Stankoven in game 3.
Yeah.
And it was Wyatt Johnston in the first round. And who has not been an up and down player is Chris Tanev.
Yeah.
He has been phenomenal. In the first round, it was against Eichel. In the second round, it's against McKinnon. And what a trade that Jimmy Nill made there, because not only did they get this matchup guy, they said they weren't giving up a first-round pick, and they didn't.
Right.
They gave up a second and a prospect, and Tanev has been money for them.
He has been really, really good. And you have to believe it'll be priority to extend Chris Tanev in Dallas, I would think.
I would think it would be priority. Yeah, I would think it's a priority, but I would also think that if Tanev wants it all to wait till July 1st,
yeah,
he's going to have a list of suitors that start to grow by the moment for him.
No question. All right, to the East, and maybe the officiating conversation starts here. I mean, you can pick it apart in every series in round 2. It's just the way it is normally in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Florida, Boston. So they lose Brad Marchand in game 3 with an upper body problem. The way they started game 4, they're up 2-0. I mean, you have to feel pretty good about yourselves. And then they just let it slip away. But again, it sounds like I'm being critical of the Boston Bruins, and I'm not really, because of just how well balanced the Florida Panthers continue to prove that they are. If they get blown out of a game, all right, well, Maurice flushes it and they dial it back in and they're ready to go the next game.
Yeah, Florida's better. I mean, that's really the story of these two teams, is that Florida's bigger and deeper and tougher and better. Yeah. And there's no chance that the league did not see the reverse angle on the Bennett Marchand play. There's no chance. It's a television view. It's always available, and it wasn't shown in the game, but it's available.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was surprised once I saw that there wasn't at least some discipline to it. Again, whether it's a fine or something, but the fact that Marchand was going to miss game 3 and is probably going to miss, it sounds like he's going to miss game 4.
Yeah.
That feels like a little bit of a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Florida is just really good. And so there was all this talk about the Bruins and retribution, and who's going to do that?
Yeah.
Like, they don't have Cam
Not
Neely.
really.
They don't. No, they don't have Sean Thornton. They don't have Wayne Cashman. Like, it's not the old Bruins. The team is not built like that.
No.
And Florida, again, is bigger and meaner, and they would be able to withstand most of that.
Yeah.
But, Boston's up 2-0, and Florida keeps just like plugging away and chipping away. And, and they're, I picked them I picked them to win the East. And I just, quite some time ago, I watched them play a game in Detroit. It was a afternoon game we did there. And they walked into Detroit, and Detroit was just humming along there. And it looked like 2 different leagues. I was like, wow, they are really good. And that kind of crystallized my view on Florida. I think they're very, very good.
How about Sam Bennett, right? He's back. He's healthy, a difference maker. You talked about the incident with Marchand, and then to rub some salt in the wound, he scores the tying goal, right? 2-2 goal. They call goalie interference. Well, they don't. Montgomery calls for the challenge. I don't know about you. I thought it was coming back instantly, just based on the one replay, which showed Sam Bennett kind of heave Charlie Coyle into Jeremy Swayman. I'm like, that'll get called off.
There was no chance in my mind that was going to count. None. And Dregs, I like goals. I'm looking most of the time for the goal to count. And that one I couldn't even build a case for why it would count. And then not only that, of course, they get penalized on the play because the challenge doesn't work. And that must have felt like an anvil falling on their head when that thing got allowed.
Yeah.
And now you're just like, you go back and, you go back home, and Florida's got a chance to wrap it up. And, I would say, what happened last year in their series would, if there was any comfort for Florida being up 3-1, they would look and say, we just did it last year. These guys can do it to us.
Yeah.
And so, this is when you've got a team down, and you've got to put them away here.
So if we can make a bold prediction, and it looks like Florida, you've already said you've got Florida winning the East. Okay, so for the Carolina Hurricanes to come back against the New York Rangers is only unlikely because of how good the Rangers are. Yeah, of course it's possible. So what does a Ranger Florida Panther Eastern Conference final look like to you?
Oh, it would be the two best. It honestly would be the two best teams.
Yeah.
It would be physical and really fast and intense. Florida, the Rangers really lean on their special teams, and Florida would have to try and deal with that. But Florida's got good special teams as well.
Yeah.
The 5-on-5 game, I'll tell you, I've been really impressed with the Rangers. And since most of the games played 5-on-5, they have to be able to. They have to be able to hold serve there, and they have.
Yeah.
They've outscored Carolina in that regard, and Carolina's good as well at 5-on-5. So I think a lengthy series. You got Shesterkin and Bobrovsky, and To me, it almost becomes a coin flip. It really does, because I just wouldn't say that any team has such a great advantage over the other.
Yeah, and it's always difficult aside from goaltending to pinpoint one key guy, because your top offensive players, if the matchup works, they tend to nullify each other, right? Neutralize each other. I'm just thinking of that. Who did Jacob Trouba almost take out there? Natchez?
Oh, Natchez. If he would have hit Natchez, he would have been suspended for the playoffs.
But okay, he didn't, so there's no suspension. But if again, fast forward to the Eastern Conference Final, or I mean, if you're a Hurricane right now, are you not visualizing that play? Like, is Trouba, can a one player, because of something like that, be in another team's head just based on how he plays that type of game?
It would be foolish to say it's not. I wouldn't say it's in the forefront of everybody's brain, but like the late Brian Marchment, he was like that. You knew where he was, and if you didn't, you found out in a hurry. Trouba is like that. Like he is. It's one thing to finish your check. He finishes right through his checks. Mm-hmm. He does it all the time. And 99.5% of them are fine, but they're loud. Like, they are loud. And each hit sends a little notice that, that's how he's going to play. So I would say Trouba is and can be a difference maker for them in a series like that. He's had some trouble. Him and his partner, Eric Gustafson, they were on for 3 goals the other night. Mm-hmm. So you got to balance it out. But he is a factor. Absolutely. He is. And you would say the same, that's why Bennett, Bennett's not a 45 goal scorer, but he's a factor because of the way that he plays, the heaviness that he plays with. It is a factor, 100%.
We'll get to coaches in just a moment, but I wanted an overarching thought from you on officiating. I mean, it's always a conversation piece, right? At this point of the playoffs, at any point of the playoffs, going in, the fans wonder, is that standard that everybody talks about going to be employed? So again, we're getting to the latter stages of round 2 of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and what's your assessment generally been of officiating this stage?
I think it's the same as it would be in another year, is that it's never good enough. It's never enough. It's never, people want more penalties called until they want less penalties called. It's seriously, it's the same thing every year. You want lots of penalties to be called. You want, not lots of penalties. You want the standard to be tight. You want the best players to be able to do what they need to do without it getting into a rodeo, which basically is dumbing the game down when that happens. And we don't want, I don't think anybody wants that. You want the best players to be able to do their thing. I never can quite decide if there are more misses because the games are so intense and every check is finished, every puck battle is more, is more fought for. I can never understand if there's more of them or if we're paying attention more.
Yeah.
And part of me thinks it's that we're paying attention more, and everything, the players are so heavily scrutinized, so are the officials.
For sure.
So for example, Boston can be pissed off at the refs. Edmonton can be pissed off at the refs. They're trailing in the series, not because of the refs. In both cases.
Yeah. No.
I think that's pretty fair to say. You can find a number of plays each way and you go, oh, I didn't like that call. I didn't like that call. But at the end of the day, in both of these 2 series where I think it's been maybe the discussion has been most heated, those teams that are trailing are not trailing because of the officials.
No. And look, this because you're around the officials and have been around the officials your entire life. They want to get it right. 100% of the time, they want to get it right, and are well aware of the mistakes that they make. after the fact, right? I mean, these guys are scrutinized. People don't realize it's not the fan base yelling at the officials. That comes with the territory. It's jobs on the line, money on the line to go deeper into the playoffs. Like, there's a ton of pressure on these guys.
Pressure and scrutiny. It's the same as the players, except that the referees never have anyone cheering for them. No. And so the best they can hope for is that they get out of town and people say, yeah, the refs were fine. And that would mean that's a great game.
Yeah.
Because nobody has any legit complaints. But when they miss a call, they know it. So people understand, they get video on it. The day after a game, they all get video clips uploaded to their computer. They look at them, they scrutinize them, they have discussions with their supervisor, and they wear that. It doesn't mean, they're not looking for sympathy, but they wear it. And it's everybody says it's how tough the job is. Just think of how many decisions they make in a game. And it's way easier for me to sit here now at my age and go and understand how easy or how difficult it is. But man, I used to give it to those guys. And I was like, right. And it's just, the pressure is relentless on them. Every call seemingly matters so much.
All right, let's wrap up headlines with, a thought on the Maple Leafs. Of course, can't get through the headlines without the Maple Leafs. General Manager Brad Treliving busy this weekend, met with Craig Berube, Todd McClellan, as the coach search is well underway. Sheldon Keefe has spoken to Tom Fitzgerald in New Jersey. So decisions this week. Number one, if you're Sheldon, he talked about, spending time with his family in his video message, right? Thanking the fans and the organization and all that after he was dismissed late last week. So he has a decision to make. Does he want to get back onto an NHL bench this soon? He has 2 years remaining on the extension from the Maple Leafs. You have a feel either way. Berube, McClelland, kind of similar guys. Does Chief get the edge here a little bit, Ray, because of the Stanley Cup? And I say that because Keith Pelley, the head of Maple Leaf Sports, in the first 2 minutes of addressing the media on Friday, used the word win 7 times. 7 times. And it was, we must win, just win. So, and Craig Berube is a Stanley Cup champion with the St. Louis Blues not that long ago. Does that maybe give him a bit of an edge?
I guess. I think you're probably splitting hairs with the two of them. You're looking at 2 guys that have been around the block for a long time, 2 guys that know what they're doing, 2 guys that have a firm hand in the way that they deal with a team. Both of them would have a 200-foot view of the game, so it's not like you're bringing in a new age, new thinker. It's a pretty straight line view for both of them. And at the end of it, they're going to interview them, and whoever they're most comfortable with, whatever staff they're most comfortable with, is the one that's probably going to get the nod there. I don't have a gut feel. It feels like there's momentum to Craig Berube. But that's just because of what we hear and what's been talked about. As for Sheldon Keefe, it's not just whether you want to jump right back in. It's like, is this the right place for you to jump back in? He's in a good place, and he can be strategic about which job is the best for him. But the other factor to this is there's been so much change in the last 16 or 18 months. You have to think that most of those jobs are secure for at least the next little while. And, is this going to be the best one that comes up, or is there something else that you feel better about? And, a lot of that's just a personal choice, and he can't really make the wrong choice here.
No.
If he's getting offered a job, if it's Jersey, but he's got to know, for his family and his kids and his career, the timing of it is probably good for him to
Yeah.
to make that decision.
Yeah. And those decisions by the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Devils, Jim Hiller likely going to stay on the bench with the Los Angeles Kings. All of that more or less will get cleaned up this week. That's the expectation. Thank you, Tim Hortons, for headlines.
Introducing Tim's new flatbread pizza. Freshly prepared and served hot out of the oven. Available in chicken parmesan, pepperoni, bacon everything, and simply cheese. There's a new Tim's run in town. New flatbread pizza. Try one today.
Our interviews on Ray and Dregs are brought to us by Canadian Club 1858 Original, the flagship whiskey for Canadian Club, where it all began, aged over 3 years in oak barrels before being bottled. The result is the smoothest possible flavor, spicy, zesty, hints of rich oak, and sweet vanilla. We'll take some questions, ask Ray and Dregs anything later in the week, Ray. You can send us your questions on X, Instagram, at Ray and Dregs, or on the website, rayanddregs.com. You might be a little rusty. It's been a few days, right? You were in Vancouver, spent some time with the family, but now you're back in the broadcast world. And
best part for me here, Dregs, best part is right out the window is the garden. I can't get lost. I can find it. So I can get in there, and then you can I'm hoping to find a rhythm, but the walk over is like, I don't know, 3 minutes because traffic's bad.
Yeah.
Like you got to watch you don't get run over. But other than that, it's even I can get over there. So look forward to it tonight. The garden will be popping again.
Yeah, it'll be vibrating. That building is special. If you haven't, I haven't been there since the renovation in playoff time. I don't believe so.
It's it is different. There's just it's like the city. There's an energy to it that's different than everywhere else, and the garden is too.
Excellent. Well, I'll have a good call, and
thanks. We'll check in later on. I'll be in Dallas for Game 5 on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Of that series, and of course they play tonight, so we'll see how Game 4 goes there too. So have a good week, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks, Rates.
Yep, thank you. And thank you to our sponsors who continue to support Ray and Dregs, our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey, and Tim Hortons. Until next time, stay safe. Enjoy the playoffs, everybody.